Good day, ladies and gentlemen. This is Saul van Grenen, aka Mr. VG, and I am at the last video in this series where I'm working through an exam paper with you, a grade 10 paper 1, and this is for me one of the most favorite questions, one of my most favorite questions I've ever come across in terms of parabolas and applying parabolas, to everyday life. So I want you to hit the pause button and try this sum yourself before coming back and we're working through it step by step by step. So when we look at this, Louis went to the shooting range and found a rocket launcher to shoot for fun. His friend decided to model the one shot using a parabola. The y values represents the height of the rocket in meters above the ground, with the x-axis representing the ground. The x values are measured in meters. Okay, so that's just, it's a good thing to know for us that we are working in meters, both for x and y values, while y represents the height. So let's interpret the question before we dive into answering the question, okay? So the information says that it's a parabola, and there's my starting point. So I know that I've got a set of coordinates that's on my parabola, okay? So this graph is a frowning parabola, which is evident from the sketch, okay? It is quite evident when looking at the sketch. Now, what does the Q value represent? It represents the highest point on your parabola, so your maximum height. So the first question is, give the height from which the rocket is launched. Okay? The height from which the rocket is launched, very important. That's the y value at the start, because it's height. So 1.8 what? Meters. Okay? Because we are working in meters. Okay. Next up, the next question is asked, calculate the maximum height. There's my monkey, the height. But what are my mountains? So what's my game plan? Okay, how am I going to get there? Well, for me to get the height, I can just as well calculate the Q value. So what's the examiner actually asking me to do? The examiner is actually asking me to calculate the Q value. The examiner is actually asking me to determine the equation of the graph. How can I do that? First question, can you read the value from the graph? Just look at the graph. Can you see the value for Q? No. Then I have to substitute in. And that's why they gave you those values. So I'm going to substitute the -3 into x and the 1,8 into y, and I'm going to calculate Q. This gives me that Q is 4,8 meters. Remember, if you don't answer the question, you might lose a mark. Okay? So what was the question? Not calculate the value for Q, but the question was, calculate the maximum height. So let's say that to them. The maximum height is 5,8 or 4,8 meters. You see what silly mistakes can come into the exam, okay? Please be very, very careful that you don't make silly mistakes like I just made, okay? 4,8 meters. Now let's look at the last question. Oh man, this was lekker. A square piece of paper, 2 meters by 2 meters, lies flat on the ground with its closest edge 4 meters from the x value of the launch. Okay, so let's draw that. So 4 meters from the x value, they place a square piece of paper. That is 2 meters by 2 meters. Okay? Will it hit the piece of paper? Well, now the question is, it's lying flat on the ground. So what am I actually asking you? I'm actually asking you for the x-intercept. Okay? I'm actually asking you for that point there. So in other words, I want you to actually determine the x-intercept of the graph. And I can do that by making y 0. Ladies and gentlemen, one of the key concepts in all of mathematics is that whenever we place you in a scenario, take your maths and bring it outside of the scenario and put it on the sketch. Then kind of forget about the scenario and just take your knowledge, your algebra, your skills, your toolbox, and solve the mathematical scenario, the mathematical sum. Solve the sum and then interpret later on. I hope I made that clear, okay? So forget about the scenario now, solve the sum. So I'm going to make that one 0. I'm going to make the y value 0, and I'm just going to solve. Now, usually I would tell you to factorize, but this is not factorable, okay? It's not a difference in squares. So I'm going to try and isolate my x squared. So I'm going to take my x squared over. I'm going to multiply by 3 on both sides. And this leaves me with x squared being plus, or let's just go back a bit. Whoa, I'm going way too fast. So first of all, I'm getting x squared alone. Now I'm trying to get rid of that square. So I am going to take a square root on both sides. But ladies and gents, a very important thing for grade 11 and 12. If you put in your own square root, you have to say plus or minus in front of that square root. And therefore, x is at plus or minus 3,79. So that means on the sketch, I have a 3,79. But now let's just go a bit more accurate with my sketch. So I've erased that right part. And I said, okay, where does the actual piece of paper lie? So I know that there's a 3,79 that side. Where is going to be the closest edge of that piece of paper? The closest edge is 4 meters from your starting x value. Okay? So my starting x value is at -3. So the closest edge will be there by +1. Again, how do I get that? Simply taking the -3 and adding 4 meters to that. That's the closest edge. Now, where would the furthest edge be? Remember, this is a square piece of paper. 2 meters on. So 2 meters on from 1, the furthest edge will be at x equal to 3. But where does the rocket fall? Where does that hit the ground? It hits the ground at 3,79. So does the rocket hit the piece of paper? No. It misses the target. I love these kind of questions, ladies and gentlemen. I love it, love it, love it. So what I encourage you to do is to look at these scenarios. Put the information on the sketch. Ask yourself, what are they asking me? Then go and do normal maths. And only when you answer the question do you now go and say, you know what? This is, where in the scenario, yes or no. We could have, and I'm saying this to you clearly, asked you, just for the C part of this question. So for 8 marks, will the target be hit? Yes or no? And then you would have to go through the mental process of saying, okay, you know what? I want the x-intercept. But for me to get the x-intercept, I need the equation of the graph. For me to get the equation of the graph, I need to substitute in first. So I had to go through all of these processes to get the Q value in any case, and then go through the thinking process of making Y0 interpreted for 8 marks. This is the way that matric final exams, they sometimes love to ask you one big chunky question like this. Wow, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed this video as much as I did. This whole series was a lot of fun for me to make. I hope you enjoyed it as well. But for now, this is me signing out, and I'm going to check you again soon with the second series of videos, which will be about paper 2. So keep well and have a beautiful rest of your day. Cheers.